Ever wonder why Sandy's house changes between episodes or how fire exists underwater? SpongeBob has confused fans for decades with seemingly impossible plot holes. From Pearl being a whale with a crab father to Gary acting like a house cat, these mysteries have spawned countless theories. But most of these plot holes actually have logical explanations that make the show genius. Today we're solving every major SpongeBob plot hole, from volcanic vents enabling underwater fire to why Mr. Krabs is a tragic widower. Stick around to discover the heartbreaking reason Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy vanished forever. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Now let's get started with the first plot hole. Sandy's house never looks the same twice. One episode shows an oak tree in her dome, the next episode has a completely different tree. Sometimes her dome looks like solid glass, other times it seems more like plastic or some weird material. Her furniture moves around, her lab setup changes, even the size of her tree dome seems different. Most fans just write this off as animation errors or lazy continuity. They think the creators just forgot what Sandy's house was supposed to look like. But here's the theory that actually makes sense. Sandy changes everything on purpose. Sandy Cheeks is literally the smartest character in Bikini Bottom. She's a scientist, inventor, and engineer all rolled into one furry package. This squirrel builds rocket ships in her spare time and creates crazy inventions every other episode. Why would someone this creative and restless keep the same boring setup forever? Think about it. If you had Sandy's skills and lived underwater in a dome, wouldn't you constantly upgrade and change things? She probably gets bored with her old tree and decides to try something new. Maybe she experiments with different materials for her dome to see what works better. Scientists do this stuff all the time. The real controversy here is that fans want consistency in a show about a talking sponge who works at a burger joint underwater. SpongeBob himself changes jobs, personality traits, and even his house layout between episodes. But somehow, Sandy improving her living situation is where we draw the line. Sandy's changing tree dome actually makes perfect sense for her character. She's always building, always experimenting, always trying new things. Her house reflects that restless, innovative spirit. The trees and dome materials change because Sandy actively changes them. She's not stuck with whatever the animators drew in season 1. This plot hole actually shows great character development. Sandy's home evolves because she evolves. Case closed. Pearl's biological parents moving on. Let's talk about the second plot hole. Pearl's family situation makes no sense. Here's a teenage whale living with a tiny red crab who calls himself her dad. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs spends half the series trying to date other sea creatures like Mrs. Puff. People wonder how a crab and whale could even be related, and where Pearl's mom went. The official SpongeBob trivia book actually answers this mystery. Pearl's mother is Mrs. Krabs, and she's also a whale. That's why Pearl takes after her mother. They're the same species. Mr. Krabs somehow managed to marry a whale, which honestly makes him even more impressive than we thought. But here's where things get controversial. The trivia book doesn't explain what happened to Mrs. Krabs. Did she die? Did they get divorced? Did she just swim away one day? The show never talks about it, which creates this weird elephant in the room situation. Think about Mr. Krabs' dating episodes now. This guy lost his whale wife somehow, and he's out there trying to find love again. That Mrs. Puff storyline hits different when you realize he's probably still dealing with whatever happened to Pearl's mom. Maybe that's why he's so overprotective of Pearl. He already lost one important woman in his life. The real plot hole here isn't Pearl's biology anymore. We know her mom was a whale. The mystery is what happened to Mrs. Krabs and why the show pretends she never existed. Mr. Krabs acts like a single dad who's been alone forever, but he clearly had a wife at some point. This explanation actually makes Pearl's family situation more tragic than funny. Mr. Krabs isn't just a cheap boss, he's a widower raising his daughter alone. SpongeBob's origin of becoming a fry cook. Here's the third plot hole. Why is SpongeBob so good at cooking? From episode 1, this yellow sponge makes perfect Krabby Patties like he was born for it. When Mr. Krabs fires him in different episodes, the restaurant falls apart immediately. SpongeBob has this natural talent that seems to come from nowhere. The new prequel series, Camp Corral, finally explains where SpongeBob learned to cook. Young SpongeBob goes to summer camp where Plankton works as the main cook. Plankton needs help in the kitchen, and eager little SpongeBob jumps at the chance to learn. This is where he develops his cooking skills and passion for making food. But here's the controversial part. This explanation creates an even bigger plot hole. If Plankton taught SpongeBob everything he knows about cooking, why can't Plankton make a decent Krabby Patty himself? The main series shows us that Plankton is terrible at cooking and can never figure out the secret formula, yet somehow he was good enough to teach the best fry cook in Bikini Bottom. This backstory makes Plankton look even more pathetic. He trained his biggest rival without realizing it. SpongeBob took everything Plankton taught him and became better at it. Now Plankton spends his whole life trying to steal recipes from his former student. Maybe Plankton was actually a decent cook back in his camp days, but years of failure and jealousy made him lose his skills. Or maybe SpongeBob was just naturally gifted and took basic lessons way further than Plankton ever could. Either way, Camp Corral solved one mystery, but created another. SpongeBob's cooking talent makes sense now, but Plankton's incompetence makes even less sense than before. Sandy's true backstory. Now for the fourth plot hole. Why does Sandy live underwater? She's the only land creature in Bikini Bottom, which makes no sense. Early episodes just say she moved from Texas to pursue science, but that's pretty vague. Why would a squirrel choose to live in the ocean of all places? The episode Chimps Ahoy finally gives us the real answer. Sandy works for a company called Tree Home Enterprises. They pay her to live underwater and create inventions. She's basically on a work visa that could end any time if her bosses get disappointed. When the chimps visit to check her progress, Sandy scrambles to impress them with a nutcracker banana peeler invention. Luckily, they love it and give her a raise plus more time in Bikini Bottom. Here's what makes this controversial. Sandy's entire friendship with SpongeBob depends on her job performance. If she makes bad inventions, she gets sent back to Texas immediately. That means every hangout, every adventure, every moment with her friends could be the last one. Sandy's living on borrowed time. This backstory also makes her character more tragic. She's not in Bikini Bottom because she wants to explore the ocean or make friends. She's there because her company sent her. All those times she talks about missing Texas make more sense now. She's basically trapped underwater for work. The real question is what happens if Tree Home Enterprises goes out of business or decides the project isn't worth it anymore. Sandy would have to leave everyone behind and return to land. Her whole life in Bikini Bottom depends on impressing some chimps in suits. This explanation solves the mystery, but makes Sandy's situation pretty depressing when you think about it. Here's the fifth plot hole that drives fans crazy. Nobody can figure out how old SpongeBob actually is. Some episodes show his driver's license with a birth date of July 14th, 1986. The show started in 1999, which would make him only 13 years old when he got his job at the Krusty Krab. A 13-year-old working full-time seems pretty weird, even for a cartoon. Here's the actual solution that makes everything click. SpongeBob is mentally and emotionally stuck at 13 years old forever. His driver's license shows 1986 because that's when his body was born, but his brain stopped developing around age 13. This explains why he acts like a kid no matter how many years pass. Think about it. SpongeBob has the job skills of an adult, but the emotional maturity of a middle schooler. He can handle complex cooking techniques and work full-time, but he still plays with toys and gets excited about bubbles. His brain developed enough to function in society, but stayed childlike in personality. This theory explains why he never ages throughout the series. His body might get older, but his mind stays frozen at 13. That's why he can drive a car and live alone, but still needs help with basic adult problems. He's physically capable, but mentally stuck in childhood. The real genius is that this makes SpongeBob the perfect fry cook. Adult cooking skills plus childlike enthusiasm equals someone who never gets tired of making the same burger over and over. A normal adult would get bored, but SpongeBob's 13-year-old mind finds joy in repetition. This also explains why he fits in so well with Patrick, who acts even younger. SpongeBob found his perfect friend, someone who matches his mental age. Gary the Snail is basically his pet, which works perfectly for someone with a child's need for companionship. SpongeBob's age plot hole is solved when you realize his birthday marks his physical age, not his mental development. He's been 13 in his head since 1999, and that's exactly where he belongs. The secret box episode changing. Let's tackle the sixth plot hole. What was actually in Patrick's secret box? Fans have been arguing about this for years because some people swear they saw what was inside, while others remember the episode cutting off before the reveal. This drives people crazy because everyone has a different memory of what happened. Here's the truth. Nickelodeon aired multiple versions of this episode. The standard version ends with Patrick opening the box, but never shows viewers what's inside. But there was also a longer version that actually revealed the embarrassing picture of SpongeBob at the Christmas party that Patrick kept talking about. The controversial part is that fans remember seeing completely different things. Some people saw SpongeBob with his pants ripped at the party. Others remember seeing SpongeBob with a lampshade on his head acting drunk or silly. Both versions apparently aired on TV at different times, but then disappeared forever. Here's the solution that nobody wants to admit. Most fans probably imagined seeing the box contents. The human brain hates cliffhangers and will literally create false memories to fill in gaps. When the episode built up this big mystery and then cut away, your mind probably invented what you thought should be there. The different versions people remember are just their brains making up different embarrassing scenarios. Some imagined ripped pants because that's a classic embarrassing moment. Others pictured the lampshade because that's what drunk people do at parties and movies. Your brain picked whatever seemed most embarrassing to you personally. This explains why nobody can find the extended footage anywhere. There probably never was an extended version. Nickelodeon aired the same episode every time, but fans created their own endings in their heads. Years later, those fake memories feel completely real. The real plot hole is that Patrick's secret box worked exactly as intended. It was supposed to be mysterious and embarrassing, and it was so effective the fans' imaginations took over. The show didn't need to show us anything because our brains did all the work. Patrick's secret box proves that sometimes the best plot device is leaving things to the audience's imagination. The mystery became more powerful than any actual reveal could have been. How does fire work underwater? Let's tackle another plot hole that makes zero scientific sense. How does fire exist underwater in SpongeBob? Characters light campfires, use flamethrowers, and even have house fires while completely submerged in the ocean. This should be impossible since water puts out fire, but the show treats it like normal, everyday stuff. The theory that actually makes sense is that Bikini Bottom sits near underwater volcanic vents. These vents release flammable gases that create small pockets where fire can exist. Think of it like natural gas bubbles floating around the ocean floor. When characters need fire, they're basically lighting these gas pockets instead of regular flames. This explains why fire in Bikini Bottom acts so weird. Sometimes it works perfectly, other times it gets wet and goes out. The fire only works when there's enough gas in the area to sustain it. When the gas runs out or gets diluted with too much water, the flames die. Watch carefully and you'll notice fire behaves differently in different locations throughout the show. The volcanic vent theory also explains why Bikini Bottom has such weird weather patterns. Underwater snow, rain, and storms all make more sense if the area has active geological activity. The vents could be releasing different gases and particles that create these impossible weather conditions. Even the random temperature changes make sense if thermal vents are heating different areas at different times. Look at where most fire scenes happen. They're usually near the Krusty Krab or downtown Bikini Bottom. This suggests the main gas vents are concentrated in the city center. SpongeBob's house might be positioned perfectly to catch gas drifts from nearby vents, which is why he can use his stove and have campfires in his backyard. But here's the controversial part. This theory makes Bikini Bottom incredibly dangerous. Living near active volcanic vents means the whole city could be wiped out by an eruption or toxic gas leak. Everyone's just casually living in a geological disaster zone. The residents are either incredibly brave or completely unaware of the constant danger. The real plot hole is that nobody in Bikini Bottom seems worried about their fire depending on random gas pockets. What happens when the vents stop working? SpongeBob's cooking career would be over, the whole city would freeze without campfires, and civilization as they know it would collapse. Their entire way of life depends on unstable geological activity. What's in a Krabby Patty if there are no cows? Here's another plot hole that makes no sense. What meat is actually in a Krabby Patty? The show takes place entirely underwater with talking fish, yet everyone eats burgers like they're made from regular beef. There are no cows in the ocean, so where does the meat come from? This gets really dark when you think about it too much. The theory that saves everyone's sanity is that Krabby Patties are completely vegetarian. Mr. Krabs uses kelp, seaweed, and other ocean plants to create a burger that tastes and looks like meat. This would explain why the secret formula is so valuable. He figured out how to make plant-based patties that taste amazing before anyone else. This theory makes perfect sense when you look at SpongeBob's cooking skills. He's not just flipping meat on a grill. He's probably mixing different types of kelp, adding special seasonings from sea plants, and using advanced techniques to create the perfect texture. The secret formula could be a complex recipe for processing ocean vegetables into burger form. The kelp theory also explains why plankton can never figure out the recipe. He keeps looking for some magical meat ingredient when the real secret is how to prepare the plants properly. SpongeBob probably uses specific types of kelp from certain ocean areas, mixed with rare sea vegetables that most people don't know about what. But here's the controversial part. If Krabby Patties are just vegetables, why is the recipe such a big secret? Plant-based burgers shouldn't be that hard to reverse engineer. Maybe the real secret is that Mr. Krabs convinced everyone they're eating meat when they're actually eating salad. This makes Mr. Krabs a genius businessman who created the ocean's first successful fake meat company. He's basically running underwater beyond meat decades before anyone thought of it. Why does SpongeBob have a pet snail that meows like a cat? Here's another weird plot hole that nobody talks about. Gary the snail acts exactly like a house cat, but he's supposed to be a sea creature. He meows, purrs, uses a litter box, and even chases balls of yarn. Real snails don't do any of this stuff. Why would an underwater snail behave like a land animal he's never seen? The evolution theory makes sense at first. Maybe snails in Bikini Bottom evolved to behave like cats because that's what worked best as pets. But this creates an even bigger mystery. How did underwater creatures learn about cat behavior without ever seeing cats? Did they somehow study land animals and decide to copy them? Here's the controversial truth that nobody wants to admit. Gary proves that Bikini Bottom characters have knowledge of the surface world. SpongeBob knows what cats are like, so he trained Gary to act like one. Gary's meowing and purring are learned behaviors, not natural snail instincts. This opens up a huge can of worms about what else Bikini Bottom residents know about land life. They drive cars, live in houses, wear clothes, and keep pets just like humans do. Either they're copying surface culture on purpose, or there's way more contact between land and sea than the show admits. The really weird part is that Gary seems to enjoy acting like a cat. He's not being forced to meow and purr, he genuinely behaves this way. Maybe snails are naturally smart enough to adapt their behavior to what their owners want. Gary figured out that acting like a cat makes SpongeBob happy, so he committed to the role. This makes Gary the most intelligent character in the show. He's basically method acting as a cat 24/7 to keep his owner satisfied. That's either really sweet or really disturbing depending on how you look at it. Finally, let's talk about the saddest SpongeBob plot hole. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy just disappeared from the show. These were SpongeBob's heroes, the characters he looked up to more than anyone else. They appeared in tons of episodes throughout the early seasons, then suddenly vanished, without any explanation in the show itself. The real-world reason is heartbreaking. Both voice actors passed away. Ernest Borgnine died in 2012, and Tim Conway died in 2019. Nickelodeon made the respectful choice to retire the characters rather than replace the voices. Recent episodes sometimes show younger versions of the heroes, but the old versions we knew and loved are gone forever. This creates a weird situation where SpongeBob's biggest heroes just stopped existing in his world. The show never addressed what happened to them. Did they die? Did they retire to a different ocean? Are they still living in the retirement home, but SpongeBob never visits anymore? The silence is actually more depressing than any explanation would be. The controversial part is that Nickelodeon probably should have given these characters a proper send-off episode. Fans deserved closure for characters who meant so much to the series. Instead, they just faded away like they never mattered. SpongeBob went from obsessing over these heroes to never mentioning them again. Maybe the show writers thought addressing their absence would be too sad for a kid's cartoon. But ignoring beloved characters feels worse than explaining they moved away or retired from superhero work. The younger versions they sometimes show now feel like cheap substitutes that remind us what we lost. This plot hole can't really be solved because the solution exists in the real world, not the cartoon world. Sometimes life affects fiction in ways that can't be fixed with clever writing. If you enjoyed our breakdown today, be sure to subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one.